We create what's called a story reel. And what that involves is you first go out and you record your actors saying the lines that are in the story. We use that to time out the storyboard drawings.
Hold your fire! Hold your fire! You!
This is really the first step where we get a chance to see what the picture's going to be like, how the gags work, how the timing works, how the story flows all together.
Okay, fellas, fire away!
With the story reel now completed, we now have a way to organize the entire film by numbering each scene and their exact running length. Then each of those scenes is broken down to the exact number of frames, 24 frames for each second of animation. This information is put onto an exposure sheet, or what is also called an X sheet, which tells the animator how many drawings to do for each scene.
Before the animator can actually animate a scene, they have to know the phonetics of where each mouth movement should fall. For example, if I want to write okay, I would go over to where okay starts. And that is okay. That's the word. We then will break down each word into its individual syllables and write them on the X sheet. So I go over to the X sheet and write that the O sound in the word okay will need to start on drawing number 47 and last for 5 frames. Then I go to the sound K. That's the K. And you would mark that on the X sheet. And the mouth would then simulate K. And go over, and they would know that at that point they should be having a drawing that is simulating the word K.
Okay, fellas, fire away!
We've kind of copied the old 40s look of the cartoons that we did back then.
Okay, anything you say, Mama Dearest.
Well, effects animation, I would describe it as sort of a supporting role for the character animation. It's our job to create an environment other than the background painting or the layout, to bring a sense of nature, a sense of realism into the scene, to make the scene more believable. Even if you're dealing with cartoon characters, you need that edge of reality that brings the audience into a state of believability, saying, gee, that seems so real.
Another very important kind of effects animation is computer animation. This allows the effects artist to animate very complicated three-dimensional props combined with traditional character animation. In these types of scenes, the computer work is done first, working closely with the character animator, who will later use the computer drawings as a guide when they animate the character.
To model an object inside the computer can take quite a long time, a lot longer than just maybe drawing it by hand. A prop like the roller coaster, we use it over and over and over and over again in lots of different scenes. Then we model it once, and we've got it for all the rest of the scenes.
This computer animation system allows us to describe objects in a three-dimensional environment. We can build any object that we like, any object that exists in the real world, or any object we can think of that doesn't really exist. Once we have these objects built, we'll put them into an animation environment, which we have here. Everything that's in here is made up of different objects. This car, the green part, is an object. The 2 wheels are 2 separate objects, and they can all move independently. They can perform animation functions like rotating, squashing, and stretching that conventional character animation does. But our advantage is that we can move it around very quickly, change camera angles wildly, make it very repeatable, and make it very interactive. We can set something up and look at it very quickly.
And there was one box of darts that slide down a shelf. I animated the scene by hand, but there was so much detail that we thought maybe we could clean this up in the computer when you see the box slide down the shelf and everything turning in perspective, and it's all really perfect.
Well, the first thing we do is to build the objects, to sculpt the objects on the computer. And what I've done here is I've sculpted a dart. And so I can take a look at that dart I can go closer to it, I can rotate around the dart and see it from different angles. It's like shooting things in live action. Whereas on a live action set, if you were to pick up a dart and look at it from different angles, you can see it from the different angles. Here, we can't actually touch it, but what we can do is manipulate it so that we can see it from different angles. That way we don't have to redraw it at any time. The computer knows what the object looks like from any given angle. This scene consisted of approximately 20 darts and 1 dart box. So I would take the single dart that I had manufactured in the computer, and I make copies of it. I put all 20 darts in the box and then animated the box relative to some computerized camera position.
It's sort of a new art form in animation, is combining computer-generated graphics, backgrounds, layouts moving, props moving, with the characters. It was the roller coaster that actually gave you the force, and the character reacted to that force. When the roller coaster would swing back and forth and rock side to side, the character would follow that.
When setting up a scene like this, it's very important to consider that characters are going to be put into the scene. The character animator will take this drawing that we've provided for them, place it onto a disc, an animation disc, and animate the characters on top of this based on the action that we've provided them. So for each frame of film, they'll have this drawing and another sheet that has their character animation on top of it. We always have to remember that these are made to accentuate the character animation.
The roller coaster itself, the track that's underneath it, all of that was very complex. As far as changes in perspective, the camera was always moving, the cars were rolling along the tracks, so everything was in constant motion. And these are objects that are difficult to draw by hand in the first place, but when they start moving, then it's even more complex. So by building them and animating them on the computer, it saved us a lot of time and headache.
The objects in this animation program are run through a plot program. The plotter describes this image onto a paper, and from there it is taken to ink and paint, Xeroxed onto a cell, and painted conventionally as conventional character animation.
I'm just wondering what we're going to be doing in the future, because there doesn't seem to be any end to what we can do with that technology.
The final pencil test is shot to determine if the character and effects animation are working together. But before the scene can go to the background department, the layout department must first make a cleaned-up layout drawing. This final layout will indicate the correct size and location of everything that will be painted in the final background.
Hey, background guy, can you paint me too?
Background artists paint the actual background setting, which the character is shot on a clear acetate on over top of the background. An example is this. This character is painted on a separate level, and he's put in over top. A lot of styles that we get into with background paintings have to fit the character style. The palette for Roger was decided by the type of story that was being told. We decided that it was 12 o'clock noon, it was a fair, they wanted a lot of festive color, we wanted it bright and happy, it was going to be a real quick-moving, happy film, a lot of action, so we wanted the colors to echo that feeling. Color is very difficult, especially in a carnival, because you can get real busy on you. For example, this scene here, if you don't pick your colors correctly, they really interfere with the character, and the character will just get lost. So we have to make sure that the colors that we pick are of different value and not interfering with being the same color as Roger's hand, for example. If this sun was as bright as his hand, and your eye would get confused on where to go. So everything is like toned down a bit so that the character stands out.
When we're doing a film, we have the key scenes would be the more important backgrounds. And then we have the scenes that would come along later, the close-ups, the match shots. This is a key scene. Off of this, the layout artist will take an area within this grid right here, and he would say, okay, I want to use that as a close-up, and Roger's going to be there.
Then I forgot you tie your balloon up, and that way you'll never lose it.
We wanted to create a style, so we started experimenting with different types of paintings, and these are two separate little paintings that we did to try and find a style. this one being more of a transparent style, and this one being more of an opaque style. We decided that this is the way we wanted to go, so this style got put to the side, and we started painting towards this type of look. This is the final background. This is what it looked like. In this particular scene, you'll see that this is a larger version of the bull. What happens is the camera pans over to the bull, and then you zoom in real fast. It's called a match cut. You zoom in real fast, but because this is such a small painting, if you went in on this artwork, you get a lot of breakup. You start seeing all the grain of the paper. So what we have to do is paint this exact same background, try and match it perfectly, but paint a little finer and bigger. So when the camera does pull in, you take this background away and you replace it with this background. So you're actually seeing this one in the final, but you'll never notice that you actually did switch backgrounds.
Baby! Gotcha!
In this scene, baby comes flying in here, bounces, and loses the balloon, and the balloon goes way up in the air and floats over to the bull ring, which is a different area. So we want to get the feeling that you're going into a different area and the balloon is floating way up in the air. So by doing this, we decided to go with a layout that's angled this way, which may look strange, but when you see it on the camera, it's going to look completely convincing. All you're actually seeing is baby comes flying through here, lands, comes from a little speck, lands right here, bounces, loses the balloon, your camera follows up, you feel like you're in the sky, the balloon's floating along, and then it slowly starts coming down, and you catch hint of where the bull is, and there's a bull right here, and this is the bull ring, and the balloon floats right over to where the bull is.
With the backgrounds and animation drawings completed, the film's still only half done. But before we can send all the material to be transferred and painted on cells, each drawing must be checked one by one for consistency. This important process is called animation check. The animation checker scrutinizes every drawing for continuity and line detail and areas to be painted. Also, each drawing must be accounted for against the X sheet, and all camera moves are reviewed.
I'd like to introduce you to Fran Kirsten, whose department is responsible for transforming the pencil animation drawings into the final color cells that will eventually make it onto the screen.
We currently have 20 people in the ink and paint department, which includes Xerox camera. All of these people have some artistic background. Our primary job is to supply all of the artwork that the camera department will need to shoot the final film. The type of work we do involves developing the color models, which determine what colors to mix and paint for each scene. Then the painting of all the character cells. It also includes any special effects like shadows, mattes, airbrush or dry brush, and the final checking process, which makes sure everything is accounted for before being sent to the camera department. But before we can paint a cell, the character has to be transferred to an acetate called a cell. And that takes place here in the Xerox department.
This is the front platinum room, where each drawing is placed on the platinum, and it's focused into the camera room. Now, let me show you the dark room. Come on, follow me. In order for me to explain how this camera functions, I do have to have the lights off. Okay, from this box, I have 8 plates, which I need to feed through this charging machine. I now take the plate and I press the button, put it onto the camera platen, turn this thing, I'm not sure what this does. Then lock it down with this air. The plate is now locked into place. Close the platen, shut it closed and lock it. Press this button down here, which is right here, and it triggers the lens to open up. Once the image is on the plate, I send it out to the transfer room.
The plate with the image comes out on a conveyor belt into the transfer room. The first thing we do is wipe off any excess toner, being careful not to damage the image itself. Then the plate, along with the blank cell, are placed together on the registration pegs onto the transfer table. There, an electric charge transfers the image from the plate to the cell. But the image is not permanent until we treat the cell with a chemical vapor on the fuser table. Now the image is fused to the cell. Once all of the cells have been transferred, the entire scene will then go to the Xerox check area. There they are checked one by one, comparing the image on the cell to the original pencil drawing. We want to make sure the position of the image on the cell or registration is correct and that the entire image has transferred intact. Any lines that need to be done in a color other than the Xerox line are hand-inked at the Xerox check phase of production. Now that the scene is ready to be painted, it will be distributed to as many as 11 painters. Each of them will have a color model, which indicates what the different colors are and in what area they are to be painted. Just like the animators and their cleanup artists have model sheets as a guide to how the characters should be drawn, the painters have color models to guide how the cells should be painted. The color models usually will be done before a scene reaches ink and paint. Here we have a color model, and what we do, we get with the art director and the background artist to make sure that we can see Mom and she doesn't blend right in with the background.
We want to make sure that these colors aren't, these are getting a little close here. So we have to be careful.
We can sometimes make 10 models and they're still not happy, but we go back and eventually we get that.
So you stay here and watch Baby Herman. No, not that. Anything but that.
Once we determine our color models, we mix all of the paint for the entire scene, making sure we mix enough so we don't run out of paint in the middle of the scene. This is where we mix our paints here. As you can see, we have Mum's nail polish color, and we have the glove shadow. He does look quite simple, but he has 13, 14 colors on here.
Okay, anything you say, Mama Dearest. Why, you know me.
For instance, a scene in Roller Coaster had the darts. There were 75 colors just on the darts alone.
Poke yourself, baby!
All of the artists working with cells wear gloves to keep off fingerprints and any smudging. We paint in a production line process, painting the dark colors first and then building up the lighter colors. We have just finished a 7-minute film, Roller Coaster Rabbit, which approximately had 23,000 cells. Roger was quite difficult. He had 14 colors. Most people could average about 16 cells a day. Although painting looks easy, it takes time to get consistent quality from an artist.
Accuracy is very important, mainly because our characters are so detailed. Because it's a different technique as opposed to, brushing strokes or doing, fine detail. This is applied by a floating process. Actually, you want to kind of puddle it on the cell, which is very different.
Before the artwork leaves the ink and paint department, there is one last responsibility called the final check area. Each piece of art, sometimes as many as a dozen for one frame of film, is carefully reviewed. We inventory all of the art to make sure it's all there and to catch any quality control problem that may have crept in.
Basically what I'm doing is looking for any problems. I use the same exposure sheet the cameraman will use, because what I'm doing is a dry run of camera, how the camera will actually see it. Scene 25 from Roller Coaster Rabbit's a good example. There are 7 levels in this scene. The background always goes down first. The first level that goes down is a level of shadows for the props. They look black on here, but the camera shoots them at a percentage. These are the props that the shadows go to. And then, on top of that, there's another level of props that animate separately from the first level. The next thing is the character shadow, and then his body goes down without a head on it, because his body's not moving. And then his head goes down. I have to make sure his head sits on his body just right. Now, his head's on a separate level here because that's the only thing that's moving. This is the last level. It's the guns that are getting ready to shoot at him.
We like everybody to be multi-talented because it is very important that it's teamwork here. And when we get very, very busy and down to the crunch, that everybody
all of the artwork now completed, it's time for the technology to take over and work some of its magic in both the camera and the editorial departments.
Print! Ha ha!
Camera department here at Disney is made up of 2 cameras, 2 operators. The cameras are motion control, meaning they're more like big robots. In Disney animation, they use more care and really more detail than any other animation I've ever seen. They animate even the minute details, which is really impressive.
Camera department at Disney is a wonderful place. This is where we make the magic happen. We take what the animators have done, add moves to it, add special effects, and put it up on film.
All camera involves a certain degree of complexity. The operator has to really stay tuned to his scene and his work. All it takes is one simple mistake to trash a day's work.
The animators make the motion, but we have to add camera movements and special effects. It's called scene planning. In the cartoon Roller Coaster Rabbit, we have the scene 47.1. In that scene, we start off on Baby. He is moving at a certain amount of time. I have to scene plan so that we're on Baby the whole time. First, we had the layout down, showing what's going to be in the background. Then they give us a start and stop position, showing us where the character is going to be at all times. To make sure where we are, we have a rack over unit, which will focus down through the lens, and we will be able to see exactly what the camera is seeing. Roller Coaster Rabbit, nothing stays still. We have camera shakes, we have panning, we have zooms coming back. The scene planning in it is going in just about every frame.
The guests in the tour corridor don't really bother me here until it comes down to the flash photography. A single flash can give us a hot frame in the middle of our motion here and actually cause us a day to 3 days work.
So every time there's a change in the reel, whether it's one frame or taking out a whole storyboard idea, it's an editorial that we have to keep that up to date so that the director, the producer, the animators can come down and get an idea of how their scene fits into the whole picture. In animation, you're getting the film at various stages. You get it at the initial storyboard stage, and then you get it in the rough stage, the cleanup, and the color stage, and you're constantly putting it in and updating the reel. So it's an evolution. It's an organic process. The film starts at a storyboard stage and then grows into something else.
Everything is done primarily on film. The video complements the film. With the video equipment, we're able to see our results immediately. It saves a lot of time, and camera department and animators use this a lot so that they are able to stay on top of the scene and meet deadlines.
The sound is something that's often overlooked by most people, but it's a very, very important part of the picture, and it's a very important part of what we do here in editorial. Sound effects in an animated film don't exist. So every sound, every of a foot, every is added to the film in editorial. And the other thing that's important about sound is the sync of a film, so that you have that believability that the character is really talking, that the mouth is matching at the right time. When all the color's done, we're the last ones to get our hands on it and put the sound effects and the music and the dialogue back with it and do a final mix on the show.
With that, the film is now finished. Our work is done. All of our decisions have been made. Everything we tried to accomplish is wrapped up on a reel of film. Now it's time for the audience to see that accomplishment.